After my stroke, it wasn't just my body that was broken. It was my identity, my confidence, and my hope. But the truth is, the brain has a secret weapon, neuroplasticity. It can change, it can heal, but first you have to believe that the healing is possible. In this video, I share the emotional reality of surviving a stroke and how I began to rebuild from the inside out. Before rehab, before nutrition, I started with the fight to believe again and the science that backed me up. As a doctor of chiropractic, transformational coach, and elite athlete, I spent over 30 years dealing with patients. It wasn't until this stroke happened 6 years ago that I became the patient and truly had to see what was going on and figure out how to cure it. See, in the hospital, when you have a stroke, you forget everything you know and just hope they have the answer. Reality is, they don't. You are told neuroplasticity will kick in and will heal everything. That's not exactly the case. I was also told in 3 months, you'll know exactly where you're going to be at. That's not the case either. You see, with neuroplasticity, which is your body's ability to basically rewire the brain, retrain, and regain all these movements and things again, because your brain either forms new pathways, as I like to tell you, or more in reality, it wakes up dormant pathways. But either way, you regain this movement. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to the general public or anybody that's in this position, you need to put in the work to have this kick in fully. Going to rehab to walk 2 to 3 times a week for 3 hours total is not going to get you there. One thing I did upon getting out of the hospital, which was good 2 or 3 months, and I was at one of the leading stroke centers for rehab. It was still only an hour a day, every other day, or whatever. And I still really wasn't walking when I got out of there. Was I hired somebody to teach me how to walk? That was 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then 2 days on the weekends, I would do my own walking, stretching, things like that. Well, lo and behold, it was during this repetitive, consistent movement that I started to learn to be able to walk again. This was possibly one of the best moves that could have been made, was getting this person to help me. I would still go to rehab during this time. I was in an outpatient program at that time, and they couldn't believe it when I walked in, which was basically 3 weeks into their program, and exhibited to them that I could walk. And they're like, you cannot walk. I walk. They're like, you just accomplished 6 months of rehab in 3 weeks. Now, I explained to them what I'd been doing. But the only reason I could truly do this was the belief that I was always going to heal. And that's something many people don't start with. You're in shock at what happened. You're even in more shock at the fact of the condition you're in. But I always had the belief that I was going to get better. It was never the aha Rocky moment. It was never the wake up in the morning, fist pumping, here we go again. It was, what am I going to do today to get better, to get that 1% better? Learn how to walk again, learn how to see again, learn how to swallow again. I was on a feeding tube for months. But the thing that people never see, and I would say every stroke survivor I've spoken to, and there's been many because I help people with this now, their biggest thing is nobody can tell how bad they feel, how inefficient they feel, how less than them they feel. People look at you and they can't see a physical injury, so they assume you're better or getting better. Reality is you're far from that. And the difficulty is walking. I mean, it looks bad, but eventually you're starting to make progress. But you can't think straight. You're not as focused. Things like that. These are all things people don't see and affect what you do every day. I spent more time, and you want to tell people, like, look, here's how I'm doing. But reality is, they'll never understand unless they're there. They also don't understand how vital a part of your recovery they are. And this is a big part of it that people also don't understand. The encouragement they give you just by being a sounding board, just by being there, is amazing. And I am so thankful to so many people that have been there. But what people don't understand, and in talking to people, what I constantly hear is just nobody gets it. Nobody understands that I'm in pain. Nobody understands how tired my brain is, how I'm not thinking straight, how the pain is, how difficult it is to move. They never will. Unless, and I tell people all the time, unless somebody's gone through this, they will not understand where you're at. As long as you understand that, you can start to make progress. You can start to understand that you need to put in the work. You need to learn how to walk again through consistent movement. You can go and do rehab where they train, say, do leg extensions for your quads or do leg curls for your hamstrings or toe raises for your calves. But unless you put that coordinated motion into effect, that's not going to translate to walking. It's a step in the right direction, don't get me wrong. But you need to work on that coordinated motion. And that's what helps with the neuroplasticity, where you're actually walking again. Like I said, I hired somebody to teach me how to walk. We started with walking through the house I was in, through the living room, the kitchen, and the dining room. And that was difficult. By the time we were done, 3 months later, I was walking 5 miles with him outside, doing push ups, doing sit ups, doing free weight squats. He was killing me, and I was responsive because I knew I didn't want to spend the rest of my life not being able to walk in, not being me again. And it's amazing the progress you can make. Well, when I work with people, I tell them this all the time. You have to actually make the effort. You won't feel like it every day. You probably won't feel like it ever. You just want to be better. And when you realize the doctors have told you, you'll be better in 3 months, maybe 6 months, and you're not. How do you get there? That's when in my case, I took my education, my knowledge of being with school, of working with athletes, of doing all this and working with people over the last 30 years and put them into play, put the nutrition into play, put the rehab into play. And here's what I needed to do to truly get better, to truly take it to the next level, which was walking by myself, walking without assistance, walking without a crutch, without a walker, was swallowing, which was a big thing they never thought I'd do again, but actually eating and swallowing, being able to see without prism glasses, being able to have coordinated movement of my hands. It's amazing what you can accomplish, but this doesn't happen unless you work at it. Nobody wants to have to rely on family members, their children, their sisters, their brothers, their mothers, their fathers, whoever it may be, their friends, to help them. It's a situation that unless you're there, you'll never truly understand, because it's one thing to say as a person who doesn't have these difficulties, yes, I would never want to be in that position. It's another thing to actually be in that position. And now how do you get out of it? So most people get defeated by this. I've talked to so many people who they want to have that title and they have an excuse. I had a stroke, therefore I have this problem. And this could be applied to pretty much any other problem or any other insult or issue that you may have. But that's what happens. And I can't do this because I had a stroke, because I have this injury. And it's, instead of using that as motivation, that's an excuse for them not to do it. And they just go on and on without doing it. And it's unfortunate. So what I try to do with people is get them to get 1% better every day. And it's like I said, unless you've been there, you can't understand this. I can't, I get them to hold a glass. There's many things you can't even generate the force to pick up a glass by yourself in the beginning, or drink, swallow, see, catch a sock. I had one day in the hospital, they're like, okay, today we're going to throw you sock balls. I couldn't even come close to catching it. They said, okay, pick it up and throw it to us. And this is from somebody who was an elite athlete who played sports, whole thing, was very accomplished. Um, I went to throw a sock to somebody sitting maybe 4 feet in front of me. It went completely the other direction, off to the side. I had no control over my appendages. And it took working back to that point, to the point that I walked down the street, you couldn't tell I had a stroke. Or initially, they told my family I'd be dead in 2 days. They didn't tell me. They didn't tell me anything because I was a meat puppet. But, and all of a sudden, here I am 6 years later, not dead, and I put in the work. A great deal of why I'm still here has to come with what my life was up until there, with the nutrition, with the training and everything and the condition my body was in. But that helped to that point. But in moving forward, I had already developed that discipline, not the motivation, because motivation like that, hear the Rocky music, da da da, get excited, not that. But the getting up every day and doing what needs to be done, of walking, of learning how to use your hands again, how to see again, how to communicate again. There's all these things that don't have any physical marks that people look at and they're like, well, you seem fine. And you're really not. It's the further I get into this with my own healing, and I'm still healing. Don't get me wrong. You just can't see what I'm going through. And I've worked with clients now. I've worked many different situations with businesses. I have the brain power, but there's still days it feels somewhat difficult. And if you don't work at it, these things don't get better. And I'm as bad as anybody else out there, as good as anybody else out there has been. It's just a matter of working at it. Everybody's issues are their own. Everybody's insult, every issue that they've had, be it a stroke, be it a brain injury, be it what kind of injury or insult they may have had, that's the resulting difficulties from that are individual to that person. So you can't say, well, I could do this, so you can do that. It's not that at all. It's you've got to put the work in and you've got to have the right plan. And the biggest thing that helped me, like I said, I had the discipline to get up and do it every day, was there's days you just don't want to do it. But the accountability that I knew somebody was going to be there at say 8 a.m. and I've got to be ready to go. The answer was not, I'm going to stay in bed. That was never an option. So I get up, I'd be ready, and I'd do what needed to be done. And was the option was don't do it and spend the rest of your life as pretty much a vegetable. And that was unacceptable to me and is unacceptable to anybody I speak to. They just get to a point that all of a sudden they're 2, 3 years in and they're like, this is where I'm at. And it's like, it doesn't have to be where you're at. We can always start to work at it. It may be a little more difficult now to bring those changes to you, but we can get at it. And that's where the support of those around you come in, just to be there. You don't want them to do anything for you. You don't want them to go, as simple as this may sound, you don't want them to go get a drink for you in the kitchen. You're like, I'll get it. You don't want them to cut your food. You don't want to change who you are. You always want to be there and be able to be you. And this is vital. And what's vital to that is those around you being supportive of that and realize you're trying to be you. I was lucky that people around me never treated me like that. I mean, I can tell you a real quick story with that. I was lucky enough to travel around to several people's places of business, houses. After my stroke for like 2.5 years, I mean, get on a plane and travel and go live with them to get better. And one of the places I went, I was staying downstairs in their house. I had my suitcase with me. We got to the house. They're like, you're staying downstairs. Nobody grabbed my suitcase to carry it down. Nobody helped me. I didn't ask them to. I didn't expect them to. I grabbed my suitcase and I figured out how to get down the stairs carrying that. Well, it was next to impossible. I did it because I couldn't be the person that couldn't do this. When I was the person helping all these people before. And that's the feeling you get. You just don't. you feel like a burden almost to people, and you don't want to be that. And it takes work not to be that. And when people understand, you never expect them to truly understand. But if just they treat you like a normal person, then everything works. You can get better and get yourself in the right frame of mind. So with that, I'll be doing more videos on this, on the rehab that helped, the nutrition, which is vital in all of this, of how to make this recovery, how to get back to the beginning, and how to get back to being you and better than you. And that's the key. You need to figure out how to become the best version, the best new version of you. The version of you were when you had the stroke, you're not going to be that again. Now you've got a chance to be better than that. It's like you're resetting, like you're reborn. I tell people this all the time. It's like a giant reset, and it takes time. But if you do the right things now, you can get there. And that's what's vitally important that so many people don't realize. Take this opportunity to be the best you can be, to be better than you were before, and you'll get there. Put in the work, and don't not put in the work, if that makes any sense. But get up every day, get 1% better, and be the best version of you. Again, this is Dr. Mike saying thank you.